Welcome back to Soulful Tales. There is something about the sound of rain that stirs the deepest corners of the soul. It is not simply the rhythm of water meeting earth, nor the scent of wet soil that lingers in the air. It is the way it brings back moments you thought you had forgotten. Small, fragile fragments of life that still live quietly within you. Moments that do not ask for grand memories, only for the kindness of being remembered. This story is one of those moments. I had not returned to my hometown for many years. Life, in all its relentless pace, had carried me far from the quiet roads and the weathered houses I once knew. I had told myself that there would always be time to visit, time to sit by the porch, time to listen to the rain with her. But time, I would learn, is never ours to keep. On the day I returned, the sky was heavy with gray, and the air carried that strange stillness that comes before a storm. The sight of the old house at the end of the familiar dirt path made my chest tighten, not from sadness, but from the weight of years that had passed unnoticed. It was the same porch where I had once sat with my mother, watching the world through a curtain of rain. I did not yet know that this would be the last time we would share such a moment. So, sit with me now. Listen closely, to the rain, to the quiet, to the unspoken words that drift between the drops. This is the story of an afternoon rain by the porch, and the love that lingered there long after the rain had gone. The bus ride from the city took nearly 7 hours, winding through roads I had not traveled in over a decade. Each turn seemed to pull me backward in time, though the landscape had changed in ways both subtle and jarring. The fields were smaller now, replaced in parts by pale concrete buildings with mirrored windows that reflected the gray sky. Yet there were still stretches of green, where water buffalo stood ankle-deep in muddy paddies, and where children, barefooted, ran along the edges of the road with kites that fought against the wind. I pressed my forehead lightly against the cool glass of the bus window, watching as we passed the small bridge that marked the entrance to my village. The river below was swollen from the rains of recent weeks, its surface dimpled by the first hesitant drops of the afternoon. I could feel the air shift, that deep, earthy smell of wet ground beginning to rise. When I stepped off the bus, the familiar, uneven stones of the roadside greeted my feet. The same old grocery shop stood to the left, though its signboard had faded and its wooden beams looked tired. The owner, an elderly man, with hair now almost entirely white, glanced up from behind the counter. For a moment, his eyes lingered on me. Then, recognition lit them. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and gave me a small nod. We didn't exchange words. Sometimes the heart understands what the mouth need not say. I turned toward the narrow path that led to our house. The trees lining the way were taller than I remembered, their branches forming an arch overhead. Beneath them, the shadows felt cool and close, as though the path itself had been waiting for my return. The house came into view slowly, as though it were revealing itself in cautious increments. The roof tiles, once a deep terracotta, had dulled into muted shades of brown and moss green. The outer walls were marked with hairline cracks, the kind that told stories of long summers and relentless monsoons. Yet despite the signs of age, it still held the same quiet dignity, the same feeling of safety that had wrapped around me as a child. The porch. Oh, the porch was exactly as I had remembered it. Wooden planks worn smooth by years of footsteps, the faint scent of rain-soaked timber, and that particular creak from the third board on the left when you stepped just so. It was here that my mother and I had sat countless afternoons, sipping tea from chipped cups while the rain danced before us like an endless curtain. The door opened before I could knock. There she was. My mother seemed smaller than I remembered, though perhaps it was I who had grown larger. Her hair, streaked with silver, was pulled into the same loose bun she had always worn, a few strands escaping to frame her face. Her eyes, warm, clear, and impossibly familiar, met mine with a stillness that made the years fall away. No tears, no exclamations, just a quiet smile that carried all the words we did not say. "Come in," she murmured, her voice as gentle as the rain now beginning to fall. It began softly, like a polite guest announcing its arrival with a light tap at the door. The sound grew quickly, filling the air with the delicate percussion of raindrops meeting leaves, roof tiles, and the thirsty earth. From the porch, the world beyond blurred into watercolor shades of green and gray. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of wet earth, the faint sweetness of flowering vines that clung to the fence. My mother handed me a cup of tea, pale amber, steam curling upward like a delicate thread. We sat side by side, the wooden bench beneath us creaking faintly as we shifted. Neither of us spoke for a long while. There was no need. The rain was speaking for us, filling the spaces where words might have been. I watched the drops race each other down the narrow beams of the porch railing, merging, separating, disappearing. Somehow it felt like a metaphor I wasn't yet ready to unpack. A flash of memory came. My younger self, perhaps 8 or 9, sitting in this very spot, while my mother told me stories of her childhood. Back then, the rain was never just rain. It was the backdrop for tales of paper boats set adrift in swollen streams, of stolen mangoes from the neighbor's tree, of running barefoot through puddles until the sky cleared. Now, as an adult, I understood there had always been more to those stories. Unspoken threads of longing, resilience, and quiet sacrifice. That afternoon, as the rain softened into a steady hum, I found myself studying my mother's hands. They rested quietly on her lap, the skin thin, veins faintly raised beneath the surface. These were the same hands that had braided my hair before school, mended my shirts when I tore them, and cooked meals from almost nothing during the leanest months. Hands that had always been moving, always creating, always giving. I realized then how little I knew of the dreams she had carried before I was born. Had she wanted to travel? To study further? To live somewhere beyond the edge of our village? I had never asked. Perhaps I had been too young, too self-absorbed. Perhaps I had feared the answer. She looked at me then, her eyes deep as the river in flood, and I thought I saw something, a flicker of a story untold. It passed quickly, replaced by her usual calm. "Tea's getting cold," she said softly, nudging the cup toward me. I drank, but the warmth in my chest was not from the tea alone. It was from the sudden, pressing knowledge that time was no longer a vast ocean before us. It was a narrowing stream, and we were already standing near its far bank. It happened unexpectedly. We had been listening to the rain for so long that the rhythm had become part of us. Then, as though the sound had unlocked something, she began to speak. "I once wanted to be a teacher," she said, her voice steady, almost casual. I turned toward her, unsure if I had heard correctly. She had never spoken of this before. She told me about the scholarship she had won at 17, the one that would have taken her to the provincial capital. How she had dreamed of standing in front of a blackboard, chalk in hand, helping young minds grow. How she had imagined her own small apartment, a window overlooking the bustling streets. "But," she said, and the word fell like a stone into still water, "your grandfather fell ill that same year. The money I saved for the journey went to his medicines, and soon after, I met your father." Her voice did not tremble, but I could hear the edges of what had been left unsaid, the closing of one door, the quiet acceptance of another. She smiled faintly, as though to soften the weight of her words. "I do not regret my life, but sometimes when I hear the school bell, I wonder." The rain outside grew heavier again, as though echoing the thought. Her story lingered in the air long after she had finished speaking. I found myself replaying her words, layering them over my memories of her. The early mornings, the worn aprons, the quiet evenings when she sat sewing by lamplight. It was as if I could see her life from a new vantage point, one that revealed both the beauty and the cost of the path she had walked. The rain had shifted now, falling in waves, each surge against the porch roof, a reminder of how quickly the world could change. I imagined her at 17, standing at a crossroads in the middle of a storm, making a choice that would shape both our lives. She caught me staring and reached out, placing her hand lightly over mine. "You came back," she said simply. It was not a question. It was a statement, filled with a quiet gratitude that made my throat tighten. We sat like that for a long time, the rain blurring the edges of the world beyond the porch. And in that stillness, I understood something that words could never fully hold. That love, in its truest form, is often made of silent, unrecorded moments. I did not know it would be the last. Life rarely warns you when it is about to change forever. The rain had come again, soft at first, then steady, wrapping the house in a familiar hush. We sat as we always did, tea steaming between us, the scent of wet earth rising from the garden. She seemed quieter that day, her gaze lingering on the trees beyond the porch, as if tracing the years they had grown. Her hair, once deep black, now shimmered silver in the dim light. I remember thinking how beautiful she looked, though I never told her. Perhaps I thought there would be other afternoons, other chances to say it. When the rain eased, she stood slowly, touching the edge of the doorway. "You should go rest," she said with a small smile. I nodded, not knowing that this would be the last time I would see her framed against that doorway, with the afternoon light soft behind her. The next morning, she was gone. It was as gentle as her life had been. No struggle, no sound, just a quiet departure in her sleep. And yet, the silence she left behind was louder than any storm I had ever known. Months later, I returned. The house stood just as it always had, but the air felt different, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. I walked to the porch, sat in the same chair, and poured tea into 2 cups out of habit. The rain came, sudden and insistent, striking the roof in a rhythm I knew by heart. I closed my eyes and almost heard her voice. Warm, steady, teasing me about something trivial. For a fleeting moment, it felt as if she were still there, sitting beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine. When I opened my eyes, the second cup of tea sat untouched, steam curling upward into the cool air. I left it there, letting the rain and time take it away. Some things, I realized, are not meant to be finished. They are meant to be remembered. If you are listening to this now, I hope you will remember one thing. Time is not infinite, and neither are the people we love. Visit them, sit with them, drink tea in the rain with them. Do not wait for the perfect moment because it rarely comes. The moments that matter most are often the quiet ones. The ones that seem too ordinary to hold any weight until they are gone. This was my story, but perhaps in some way it is yours too. Somewhere someone waits for you on a porch, in the gentle hush of afternoon rain. Go to them while you still can. Thank you for listening to Soulful Tales. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, share it with someone you care about, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, may you hold your moments close, and may the rain always remind you of love.